The other great thing about that is we'll be, halfway through construction, and sometimes the client's like, oh my gosh, did you order the flooring? I'm like, yeah, you paid for that 3 months ago. And they're like, oh, okay. And that makes them feel good because at that point they're getting invoices from the contractor. All our stuff is taken care of. So I have found that works really, really well. I was a little bit afraid to do that at first, to ask 50% up front. But once you do it a couple of times, you get used to it. It's lovely.
Hey kids, and welcome to Design by Wingnut Social, the interior design business podcast. I am your host, Darla Jethro Powell, and today we have guest Shila Griffith of SG23 Design, who is going to share with us her journey as a successful interior design firm, some of the successes, some of the missteps, and I'm hoping that by her sharing your journey, you can avoid some of the pitfalls and glean some of the techniques and strategies she has and successes in running her interior design business. Every now and then, I just like to get a successful interior designer's story because everybody has a different journey. Everybody does things differently. All right, before I get into my conversation with Shila, I want to remind you that Designed by Wingnut Social, this podcast, and also on YouTube, by the way, in a glorious 4K, is sponsored by Wingnut Social, the digital marketing agency for interior designers, architects, to the trade home pros. If you need help marketing your interior design firm in a big way, if you want to attract high-end clients, if you want cohesive branding, if you want to get discovered by AI LLMs, for your business, hit us up, wingnutsocial.com. Hit that little apply to work with Wingnut, and let's see how we can help. All right, before I get into my convo, you know the drill. Shila S. Griffith started SG23 Design 12 years ago to provide thoughtful, comprehensive design, procurement, and efficient project management services to homeowners, businesses, and developers. Shila and her team deliver high-level design emphasizing functionality through documentation and construction-conscious details. Guys, she has her shit together. Help me in welcoming Shila Griffith to the show. Hey there, Shila Griffith. Welcome to the show. How the hell are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you for having me.
It is my absolute pleasure to have you on the show. You know, I love talking to interior designers, successful interior designers, especially, right? And how they've managed to grow their business and imparting those little gems of wisdom on our audience. So we're here to do that. You game?
Yes.
Alrighty, cool. So in your intro, right? Shila Griffith, SG23 Design. So the SG is pretty self-explanatory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's the significance of the 23?
So I'm very type A, and I wanted to start my business at a certain time. So I wanted to go full time on my own by the time I turned 30. But I started my company when I was 27 on my birthday, which is the 23rd of March.
Well, happy belated.
Thank you.
So I can tell, you didn't have to tell me you were type A because I can tell by looking at your business and how you have everything buttoned down with your systems and processes, not even by having this conversation with you yet, but just by looking at your website, that you're a little type A. And don't take that in the wrong way. That's a compliment, right? That's a compliment. And in the green room, as we were reviewing our conversation, what we're going to talk about here, I was noticing all of your bona fides that you have on the website. You basically have a full resume on the website of anything that would be applicable towards your interior design career. And I'm not kidding, like past design related jobs, your certifications, your education, that's a really cool idea. I haven't seen anyone else do that.
Oh, really?
And all of the designers and experts I've interviewed, you're the first.
Oh, wow.
So let's start there. What's the thought process behind that?
So I haven't really thought about that in a while. So, I mean, I've updated my website many times since I started my company, but that has stayed pretty consistent. And the whole reason that started is because I started my company when I was 27, but I've always looked pretty young for my age. So it was really hard in the beginning to get clients to trust me because of that, because they're just like, oh, you look like a kid. So I really pushed like my credentials on the website. I'm like, okay, I have to like prove that I have the expertise needed to do this project. So that's how that all started.
Well, you still look pretty young. Can I ask how old you are?
I am 39.
Well, you don't look 30. You still have a baby face.
Oh, thank
so
you.
Leave it up there for a while. No, I'm just kidding. Have you found it to be impactful, or do clients refer to that? Did they say, hey, Shila, I hired you because I saw that you had A, B, C, and D?
In the beginning, it helped a lot. Now we have a big enough portfolio and we get a lot of referrals. So it's not an issue anymore. But definitely in the beginning, it was really hard to get work because people would see me and they're like, oh, she looks like a kid. Like for a while, I didn't really have my face shown on my website. I would kind of have like my face like looking away or kind of like work shots. So now it doesn't matter as much anymore. But
yeah, but I bet you anything that clients are still looking at that and saying, oh, okay, I'm in good hands. So I wouldn't take it down. I mean, even if you are 39, not looking 39, and if you guys aren't following us on our YouTube channel, designed by Wingnut Social, head on over there. You can see how beautiful and young Shila looks. Not that 39's old, please, but still, yeah, terrific. Okay. And also I noticed on your website that you list when on your frequently asked questions, and this is something a lot of designers struggle with, a starting budget.
Yes.
Which I adore. I love it. I love it. I love it. So that is going to segue us into your systems and processes, but tell me how that's helped. And then we'll get into how you're weeding out those ideal clients.
Yes. So a lot of our clients, even still, it's their first time working with an interior designer, and it's a luxury service. So, and a lot of, especially homeowners, don't really understand how much things can cost. They send us the wish lists, and the wish list is showing a range as $100,000. And that might be what they want to spend on the entire kitchen. So we're trying to manage expectations as early on as we can. So that's why we list kind of minimum expectations as far as budget, because although we want to help every client, we can't. It's not sustainable. I mean, we have overhead, I have a team. So we like to be as upfront about that as possible.
Do you find that helps when clients are coming to you, or they already have that squared away and they're like, okay, I know that this is going to be a 200 or 150 or whatever that starting is job before it, and then that helps make that conversation easier, or are they not picking up on that from the site?
No, it helps a lot, because it's not, if they've seen that information and are still contacting us, that means that they already have certain expectations. The other thing that's worth mentioning is, although we have that information on our website, our consultations are also paid. So when I first started my company, I did consultations for free. And that, when you're first starting, you kind of have to do certain things to get in the door. But then once I started charging for consults, that really changed the expectations a lot. Because if you're charging $750 for a consultation, they're not expecting the proposal to be $300. They already know it's going to be at a certain level. So that's helped a lot as well.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so now that we got that squared away, so let's talk a little bit about your being type A and having a pretty streamlined systems and processes. You have your pricing on the website. You're charging for your consultation. What is your first vetting step when a client is picking up that let's chat, booking your info call? What does that look like?
Yeah, so we have a questionnaire, a very strategic questionnaire on our website, kind of trying to figure out what the scope of the project is, what they need help with. We ask if they've been through a major renovation before. So we work, probably 95% of our projects are renovations. We've asked if we've been through that experience before. And what we've taken away from that is, first of all, if the answers are really short and they just are trying to get through the questionnaire, that's already one red flag.
Oh, okay.
I feel like if someone really cares about their project and they're trying to find the right person, they're going to try to put as much information in the questionnaire as possible. And I kind of tested this. Like, there's times when the questionnaires are very short and I'm like, and we take the info call and it's usually not, I already know it's not a good fit. As far as if someone's been through a renovation or not before, that's really helpful for us, because someone who's not been through a renovation, you have to do a little bit more hand-holding, a little bit more educating. I find the clients that are empty nesters, they're the ones who understand budgets the best because they've been through multiple renovations by that point. So it just gives us a good starting point of how to explain things to the client and how to work through our process.
That's a really good point that you mentioned. And when you said that, my eyes kind of lit up. Have you been through a major renovation before? And we do something similar at Wingnut. When Wingnut Social, when clients come to us, we ask them, have you worked with an agency before? Because you're right, that does help to set those expectations. And okay, so they're used to what this looks like, what we do for them, how that's going to work, what the give and take is in an agency. And we know that that client is just going to be that much easier to work with in the beginning as far as expectations go. Not that other clients are hard to work with, as far as the hand holding and all of that. So that is really, what do you do differently if they said, no, I've never been through a renovation before, like during the intro call? Are you setting up expectations there? Or are you putting that in the back of your mind for when the house is just a big ball of dust and knowing how you're going to handle it?
We talk about it from the very beginning. So I would say probably like 50% of our clients have never been through a major renovation before, and also have never worked with an interior designer. And a lot of them have been through a bad renovation experience. So that's why they want to work with an interior designer. So if they've never been through a renovation before, I talk to them about the process of how we work and how that ties into finding a contractor. I usually talk to them about timelines. This is another thing that's kind of unrealistic at times. A lot of homeowners have never been through a renovation before. They think, a kitchen renovation is going to happen in the next month. And I'm like, that's not feasible. We talk about that. Also, especially if it's a kitchen renovation, I have what's called a talk with them. So I tell them the most stressful parts of the project. So the most stressful parts are demo, because you're wondering how the contractor is going to put your house back together. And then the second most stressful part, and if I get a call, it's usually around this time, is about 3/4 of the way through the project. It's when they've just templated for the countertops, because the kitchen's like almost done and they can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but you still have to wait like another week for your countertops to come in and your backsplash and all that. And that's actually helped a lot, because I've had clients around that point. They're like, Shal, you told us on the info call, so we just have to be patient. I'm like, yep. So just managing expectations as far as timeline and what to expect when you're starting to look for a contractor. It's usually not the design process that scares them as much. That's usually like the fun part for them.
Yeah. I love that so much. And when I was running my design firm back in the day, I didn't have that thorough of a process with the questionnaire and setting up the expectations. And then I always found myself reassuring them. I know it's dusty now. I know you might hate us now, but trust me, you're going to love, because there's always in the very beginning, that client is super excited. And then there's that dip, like, when's this going to be done? I can't live like this anymore. And then it's like, oh my God, I'm so happy. It's so gorgeous. It's like, the perfect thing. So do you find yourself that even though you've set up those expectations, reminding the clients, or they're just like what you said? Oh, I remember you saying this. We're good to go.
It depends on the client. I usually try to remind them.
Yeah.
There's definitely clients that I know they're more nervous, so I know I have to remind them all the time. And then the ones I don't have to remind, they've been through a major renovation before, so I don't really have to remind them as much.
Yeah. Is there any question on your intake form that if they answer it in a certain way, you refer them to another interior designer? Is your questionnaire in the beginning set up to not only inform how this info call is going to go, but to help you kind of winnow the project down to, ahead of time if it's going to be a good fit? Or are you always doing that info call?
I'm always doing the info call. I would say if a client or a prospective client puts in the form, if they put something in there like, I know what I like when I see it, that's not a good fit.
That sounds like a Darla answer, actually. My wife creates the graphic design for Wingnut. She says, "What do you want for this graphic design?" I don't know. I'll know it when I see it. She wants to throttle me. Yeah, I'm not an ideal client. I'm just here to tell you right now. Okay, so you're doing the info call. You're setting up those expectations. They've seen the pricing, and then you're telling them, okay, Mrs. McNuggets, now when we go to your house, it's going to be $550, $650, $7, whatever that looks like, right?
Yeah, so we have the info call, and then if I think it's a good fit, I usually direct them to book a boutique consultation. Most of those boutique consultations are in person, so that's flat fee of $750.
Okay.
2-hour walkthrough. I usually tell them try to limit it to 4 spaces, because at 4 spaces, there's only a half-hour space. And after that, I always tell clients it's not a meet and greet. Honestly, every single consult I leave, I have a headache because I'm very introverted, so it takes a lot out of me. But we talk about space planning, furniture layout, do you like to put your feet up when you read? All my clients, I know which ones are left-handed. We go through a lot of details. And the point of that is after the consult, about a week after, they get a recap of everything we discussed and some design ideas to explore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I usually give it about a week because sometimes I'm driving. I'm like, oh, they could do this in the bathroom. So it needs some time for it to marinate. So they get the recap, and the reasons it's paid is because that recap, I mean, they could take it to another designer if they wanted to,
Sure.
honestly, but
Right.
they're getting something out of the consult no matter what. And then if they want a proposal for comprehensive or full service design, I send that along with the recap.
How do you determine, like, do you ask them, hey, do you want to work with us? Are you going to that? Or are you just saying, here's the recap and, reach back out if you want to work together? What does that look like?
So what I've been doing more recently, if I think we're a good fit, I'll tell them, I'm going to send you the proposal in about a week, and I'll send you the recap in about a week, and then I'll also send you the proposal for either comprehensive or full service design. I've been doing that for years, but the thing I've changed more recently is when I'm at the consult, I actually tell them, okay, I'm going to send you this package, the recap and the proposal, but let's get a time in the calendar for a Zoom to go over any questions you might have in the proposal. And that's been working really well because then I don't have to do so many follow-ups. We already have another meeting in the calendar. Also, it's helpful for me because that recap, they actually have to approve that to sign with us because I want to make sure that everything that is in that recap is accurate before we move forward.
I like that. All right. So they said, you know what? Yes, hell yeah. We want to hire Shila Griffith. We do full service. Are we doing flat fee or are we doing hourly?
We do flat fee.
All right. So, all right. Now let's dig into that. When you started, were you doing hourly or flat fee?
I was doing hourly.
Okay. So what changed?
Well, I realized that most people don't realize how many hours get put into interior design. So it was hard to okay, we spent this many hours on this room. Why did it take that much time? And I know why, but just the explaining gets kind of exhausting. And the flat fee so the reason I could change that is because I recorded enough data. I recorded enough data knowing how long it took for me to do everything. And that takes a little bit of time.
Sure.
I would say when you're first starting, the rule of thumb is to double how long it's going to take. And I used to think that was a high number, and it's pretty accurate.
Yeah, it is.
So once I had the data, then I could say, okay, we're, renovating the entire first floor. I know how much time this should take. So then I could start presenting a flat fee. And it actually makes the client more confident because they know how much they're going to spend. So it's really funny. You could say oh, we're going to charge hourly and end up with the same exact amount. But the whole time they're kind of nervous because they have no idea where the number is going to end up.
Yeah.
If you show them the number up front, exactly what they're getting, and you're showing the value, they're a lot more confident in signing with you.
Yeah, that was my experience as well. When I started Darla Powell Interiors, I heard experts say, do a flat rate. And I did. And I should have doubled, if not tripled, my estimated hours, right? So that in the beginning, I love that you did hourly because, you don't know. You don't know yet, really. You have the experience, your resume's on your website, right? But still, you don't know exactly, right? So it does take time of doing X amount of kitchens or X amount of bathrooms to know what that's going to look like. So how do you deal with it as a business owner and interior designer when they say, all right, out of scope stuff, scope creep? How are you building that into your agreement?
So that's in our contract. So I have in my contract that if the scope changes by 20%, I can pretty much throw out that contract and present a new one.
Oh.
And honestly, though, we don't get too much scope creep just because we're doing so much work up front at the boutique consultation.
Yeah.
Because handing them that recap or sending them the recap, between sending them the recap and the Zoom to kind of follow up on the proposals, they're thinking about if they want to add rooms or take rooms away. So we usually don't have scope creep. We might work with them in a different phase of the project, in a year from now. That happens, but that's a separate contract.
I've done that too, yeah.
Yeah. And then the other thing that we're careful of, so the times where we've lost money is not during design, because design is very predictable. It's the project management end of things.
I was just going to ask you about that. So what we did is we had a flat rate for the design, for getting it all set up, and then project management was hourly.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense. Are you doing flat for project management as well?
We do flat for project management, but we have a caveat. So we say this is the flat fee for project management, but this includes 25 hours of project management. Beyond that, we're charging hourly.
Okay, that makes sense. I think we did something. It's been 4 or 5 years since I did it. I think we did something similar for that as well. Because, when you're doing project management and you're managing contractors and they're finding bodies in the wall or, things are changing, there's so many unknown variables there that's we found that a lot harder to charge a flat rate for. So we did blocks of project management time.
I found that out the hard way because I had one project, the client with a contractor I did not recommend. And I'm the contractor's not going to stay on the timeline. I know they're not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're like, well, we want this contractor, fine. And they went 6 months over schedule, which is insane.
Yeah.
But we had a flat fee for project management. So what was I going to do? So after that project, or like in the middle of that project, I'm like, I need to change stuff in my contract proposals because this is crazy.
Yeah. Do you still work with contractors that don't work for SG23?
Yeah, so it depends. We have some contractors that we work with a lot, but if we're working in a new area, sometimes, that's outside of their radius.
Mm-hmm.
So we do work with new contractors. And if I know that in advance, I actually account for that in the project management fee. Because the contractors I work with a lot, we just don't need to discuss as much because we know how each other works. If it's a new contractor, I have no idea how this is going to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're doing that, are you telling the client 25 blocks for project management, 25 hours? And what are you thinking? What is Shila thinking in the background? How are you adjusting for that? You're 30 hours in the beginning, or what does that look like?
So it depends on the scope, but 25 is a good number. It's usually not less than 20 hours of project management, I would say. If it's a contract I've never worked with before, I'll usually add a couple more hours because we have to kind of get used to each other. It's just like a learning curve going both ways.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah. And then, I say up to 25 hours. So that is what covers us.
Are you refunding if that only goes to 22?
No.
No. Flat rate. Flat rate.
Non-refundable.
Damn it. All right. I want to go back to something you said before. You said you allow in your contract up to 20% of that wiggle room before you get into scope creep or charging hourly or what that looks like. And what constitutes that 20%? What are the metrics on that? What are we looking at?
So, like I said, that doesn't really happen with us that much, which is great. But typically when there's scope creep, if I'm changing a contract because it's pretty significant, like they're adding a room, they want to do all custom mill work in a room we didn't discuss. If we're doing, most of the first floor and they say, oh, we want to actually replace the chandelier in the foyer, I'm not going to change the contract because of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're kind of just going by if it's small things, but your vernacular in your contract is up to 20%. And then if it's, that makes sense for you. Okay. So Shila, in the green room, we were talking about communication being key with interior design clients. And you mentioned boundaries are really strong, very important, I should say. So talk to me a little bit about how you set your boundaries with clients and those expectations.
Yes. So I actually, when I send them the proposal package, I send the proposal, the contract, and I actually send a document on communication policies.
Oh, okay.
And in there, I'm very specific. I do not share my cell phone number with any clients.
Good.
Yes. And my team is not allowed to share their cell phone number either. They can call the office. And a lot of people are like, this is crazy. And it's not been a problem.
Who says it's crazy?
When I first started doing that, I feel like a lot of colleagues thought I was kind of nuts because they all share their cell phone numbers. But what if there's an emergency? I'm like, what emergency? We're not nurses. And honestly, if there's an emergency, it's usually during construction. And I can't fix that problem directly. You have to call if a pipe bursts, you have to call the contractor. I can't fix that pipe.
Yeah.
So don't share cell phone numbers. Email. We email between 9 and 5. Even if I write an email outside of office hours, I schedule it so it sends in office hours. And that did become a lot easier when I had a studio because when I worked before I got my office, it was my cell phone number.
Yeah.
And I kind of transitioned out of that. But that helps a lot because when I had my cell phone number share with clients, I was just like on all the time.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting. And then also, I feel like it's very hard to kind of communicate to the client what's an emergency and what is not an emergency if you're always available.
Yeah.
So that made a really huge difference.
Well, I have to commend you on that, especially being type A.
Oh, thank you.
That must have been not too easy of a
It was
transition.
really hard. Yeah.
Yeah, right? Yeah, to have those boundaries and that peace of mind. And when you set up those expectations in the beginning, then clients probably, I'm assuming, don't balk at it because you set those clear boundaries in the beginning. I mean, you're not rude about it. But
No.
You're like, here, you have a whole thing on here's communication. This is how we work in communication, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's brilliant. And for those interior designers in the audience who are listening saying, oh my gosh, I would lose sleep if I didn't give my cell phone. How hard was it to make that transition, right? It had to have been.
It was really hard, especially because when we get into the project management phase of things, all the contractors I work with share their cell phone number with the client. So they're like, wait a minute. So we don't really get pushback on it anymore. And now if we do get a client, it's not really pushback. It's more like, okay, well, can you give me your cell phone number so we can call you? And I just say, per policy, I can't give you our cell phone number. Like I just say it's like per the policy, which is not a lie.
Yeah. It's not me. It's policy.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish I could, but no. I love that. And how much has your quality of life improved since you've enacted that?
Tremendously.
Yeah. Yeah. I need to do that too. I always get chastised because I'm doing work and my, different kind of hours. I don't give up my cell phone, but I need better boundaries so that you.
The other thing I do too is I usually don't have my work email on my cell phone.
I do.
Yeah. The only time I have it on is if like I'm in between meetings or a conference, because I have found that if I'm looking at an email and I'm in a showroom, I can't deal with this right now anyway. Yeah. So it's just like on my mind. So I just turn it off.
That's brilliant to help with focus. And I do that. I have all my work emails on this phone. I have everything on here. And sometimes I'll be in the zone working on something, getting a podcast together, whatever that looks like. And then an email comes through and then done.
Yep.
Absolutely done. I need to do that. So thank you for that inspiration. So when we're talking about systems and processes, right, we're setting those client expectations. We're very clear. This is what's happening. And I love that you're doing that. So let's talk about the money piece. When I took the standard course, I was a beta tester for Sandra Funk. I don't know if you're familiar. She's very big on flat rates, right? She said that doing the flat rate creates a better relationship with your clients around money because you're upfront. Like you said, they know this is how much they're going to pay.
Right.
And even though your project might be $100,000 hourly, $100,000 flat rate, when you're billing them and having all those touch points around money, here's your bill, here's your bill, here's your bill. It's stressful, not just for you, but also the homeowner. And having that out of the way, for the most part, except for, a couple of things, just helps you to put that aside and focus on the work.
Right.
And that's why I adopted a lot of that flat fee strategy, except for some things, probably because I wasn't to the point of being so proficient like you are and knowledgeable about exactly what that would take with the contractors at my level of business. But I do love that. And there's a lot of people who will say, no, forget that. I'm just going to bill hourly, forget that. And that's fine. You do what works for you. But I found that incredibly helpful in the business. So when it comes to the billing, let's talk about that. And I know there's interior designers in the audience who are listening to this, who are probably taking notes. Okay, I want to start doing this. This is real, especially newer interior designers, right? Or I hope that Shila and I are imparting some helpful wisdom to you. And I know we are. So let's talk about asking for the money, getting the billing. When you're doing the design work, is it 100% upfront? Or are we doing those little fees in stages? Is it all at once? What does that look like for Shila Griffith?
So if it's a full service design project, they have 3 major payments for our services.
Okay.
So for design, there's 2 payments. So the first is the retainer, and that's to get them in our schedule. They're not in our design schedule till we get the retainer.
What percentage is that?
50%.
Okay.
And then the remaining 50% is due a month after the survey. So if we're doing a renovation, so suppose we schedule a survey for January 1st. Go to the house, take our measurements, photos, all of that. Second payment will be due February 1st.
So we're not designing yet.
Right.
Okay. Perfect.
So let me back up. We're in design development. So we've done rough space planning, but been no design presentations. So before the first design presentation, we're already paid up.
Yeah.
And that makes us feel confident because we don't have to chase invoices. And we've been to the client's house. They know we're not just taking their money. We're already working with them. So we're all paid up for design by 30 days after the survey date.
Nice.
As far as project management is concerned, we send the invoice for that right after the refined design presentation. So after the final design presentation, we send that invoice because we're getting ready for construction at that point. Procurement, any product that is approved, we send one big invoice for it. And that invoice is usually a little bit traumatic, but we've told them the whole time like how much everything costs. Like it's not a surprise at that point, but it is a big invoice. And we've not had pushback on it. And that way we can order everything. We don't have to chase them for invoices. We're not worried about, we have to get this order because the lead time just changed to 12 weeks. No, we already have all the funds. And the other great thing about that is we'll be, halfway through construction. And sometimes the client's like, oh my gosh, did you order the flooring? I'm like, yeah, you paid for that 3 months ago. And they're like, oh, okay. And that makes them feel good because at that point, they're getting invoices from the contractor. All our stuff is taken care of. So I have found that works really, really well. I was a little bit afraid to do that at first, to ask 50% up front. But once you do it a couple of times, you get used to it. It's lovely.
I was actually doing 100% upfront for the design. That was pretty ballsy,
That's my
I know.
goal.
But
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't know. I was just like, you know what? No, 100% upfront for the design piece, and then the procurement and the project management wasn't, in stages.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, so we're in it. We're doing the design. It's dusted off. The design is done. Is there anything at the end due, or it's already you're paid? You're just taking pictures and saying
Everything's
congrats.
paid up. The only thing that happens at the end is every once in a while we go to order something and it's discontinued, and we're like, oh, we got to sell it as an alternate. And if that costs more money than the original, then we'll send an invoice for that. If it's less, we send them a credit. Or if it's at the end of the project, we'll send them a refund for that. But otherwise, it's all pretty much taken care of before construction even starts.
So this all sounds really headache-free. Like really headache-free and so simple, right? I remember starting out as an interior designer and just being overwhelmed by all of this. And this makes it so easy and so simple. And this would be very easy to bullet point and adjust for you and how you do business. But I really do love this. And I know in the green room, we discussed you love doing kitchens. You do more kitchens and you do more bathrooms and knock down, tear down renovations. But I'm assuming you're also doing some furnishings as well, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So another facet of your business I want to ask you about is when you're doing a room, a living room, or whatever that looks like with furnishings, and you're specifying and procuring those furnishings, are you selling the client those furnishings and doing a markup on those?
Yes.
Okay.
So we usually, well, it's tough with trade only sometimes, but we charge the client retail. So what they would pay if they just walked into the store themselves.
Yeah.
And we take advantage of our trade discount, and that helps.
So here's a hot button question, and I've seen this a lot on the Facebook groups, and designers are doing that, right? They're saying, okay, here's the retail on this case good, but they're finding that their clients are shopping them and finding it less expensive. I don't know how that's going to work with the tariffs coming up. Probably won't, but they're finding it less expensive here or less expensive there, or even a knockoff that looks similar. Is there something in your contract that addresses that, or how do you deal with that?
So the way I deal with that is if a client finds something, so I'll just say like a plumbing fixture, for example.
Okay.
So if they find it cheaper on like Bill.com and they're like, we want to purchase this, it's cheaper. I'm like, okay, you're free to do that, but we're not going to deal with procurement for it. So if it comes in damaged, gets lost in transit, any of that goes down, we're not responsible. And usually they don't. They're like, oh, they don't want to deal with that.
We're not inspecting it. We're not returning it. If it's broken, then the whole chain of events that follow that one piece of thing, and there could be a lot. There could be a domino effect. That's all on you, girl.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Usually after I explain that, they're like, okay, it's fine.
I kind of like that. I like that approach that you're not saying, no, it says in our contract you have to buy from me, because that's kind of a hard-assed approach to that. You're still listening to the client and understanding where they're coming from, but also giving them the education piece of why you're important. Not that they don't know because of your processes, but letting them know what you do and why you do it and why that there's that value for an extra $50 for a case good or whatever that looks like.
Right. And there are clients that they're like, I understand, because everybody has a budget. And there are some clients like, I understand, but I just want to save here and there. And it's fine. And they take care of it. And if something goes wrong, they don't bother us about it.
They better not.
And, that's kind of how it goes. I also, when a client pushes back on the cost, we also try to educate them in the sense that there's a reason we work with dealers. So, especially like plumbing fixtures, for example. Mm-hmm. So, this is a silly example, but I had a project. They were about to template that day. The sink came in and there was something wrong with the glaze. If it's a big box store, they're not going to help you with that at all. But since we work with a dealer, we call them. We're like, this has a glazing issue. They're supposed to template today. Can get a replacement. They had somebody hand deliver a replacement sink. That's not going to happen with a big box store. It's just not. And most clients don't if you're doing your job well, they don't know about those things happening.
Yeah.
But sometimes I need to bring up those examples to say, this is why we prefer to handle this. It's going to run a lot more smoothly. But if you want to handle it, just let it be known. Things can go wrong.
That's part of why interior design is a luxury service, right? It's not, it is about the design and the knowledge and the talent that you provide, but it's also that experience. And the client shouldn't be worried about that. That should be something that's premium that you handle. That's part of the cost of doing it. It's not just you can get that, bench or whatever from Wayfair. There's a lot more to it. And I love the way you're setting up those expectations and educating the client as to why that happens. And here's another hot button topic, shipping, receiving.
Oh, yeah.
And those costs into the product, which can sometimes, I know we're charging retail, but it might not give us the same kind of leeway to discount to that level they're finding the thing. Not that we want to discount, right? So when you're billing for the flat rate and you're, or the 25 hours for project management, I guess this is going to go in the original. How are you putting in the shipping and receiving stuff? Because that is hella expensive and staying profitable.
Yeah. So I just want to clarify. So we do the flat rate, but it's purely for our services. So any product, we have a pretty good idea going in what level of product we're looking at. But I tell the client, you decide where you want to save and where you want to invest. I'm not forcing you to sign any checks here as far as product is concerned.
Yeah.
So for receiving, we have a separate line item for that. And we have in our contract that we work with receivers. And again, if they don't want to work with a receiver, we're going to put your information down for the contact info for delivery. And then they don't want to deal with it anymore.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. I'm sure you're in some of these Facebook groups. You have to see, and that's every day someone comes up with how, my client is balking at the shipping receiving cost. It's $500 for the soap or whatever that looks like. And having to educate them. Is that also in your onboarding documents for the shipping receiving and what that value is?
That's in the
and what's happening?
contract. Yeah.
In the contract. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
perfect. So you're set. Well, look at you. You got everything buttoned up. You're setting up those expectations.
Well, I've learned a lot of things the hard way. Anytime something goes wrong, that's why people hire us. Something goes wrong in every single project. I'm like, okay, what can I do in my intake process, in my contracting process to avoid this in the future? So I'm always updating my paperwork.
Yeah, that's what I did too. Oh, it's like, okay, this happened. Okay, we need to put some kind of language in there that covers that. So when this happens, and we don't lose $10,000, right? From before. Yeah, a lot of hard knocks there. Okay, so the space is done. Is there anything built into your contract that they allow you to come in and do a photo shoot, photography? What does the offboarding look like?
Yeah, so our projects, I do have in the contract that we're allowed to post on social media.
Nice.
We can take professional photos. That's all in the contract. I will say we don't photograph every single project because, you want to photograph your greatest hits, like the project you want to keep doing, because not every project is a style I'm necessarily into, but it's my job to make them happy.
Yeah.
But if we do a photo shoot, that's, after everything's done, the window treatments are in, and we let the client know, listen, we don't need anything on your end, just access to the spaces. We'll put everything back as we found it. We work with stylists and professional photographers. And then we're closing out the project. We try to close it out as elegantly as possible. But
do you ever get pushback on the photography piece when people are just like, no, I just want you out of my house? I've been living with this for 6 months or whatever it looks like. You ever?
The only time I've really gotten pushback was around COVID. And it was more like they didn't want too many people in the house, which is completely understandable.
That makes sense.
Yeah, we don't get too much pushback with photography. That's been the only time we've gotten pushback with photography.
Yeah. I love that you have it in your contract to put it on social media as well. And I'm sure you're doing it with respect to the anonymity of the homeowner unless they say otherwise, right? Yeah. I'm sure that language is in there as well. I've worked with interior designers and we have interior designers at Wingnut that have NDAs, or they have a lot of the clients they work with won't allow them to do that. And I'm like, sometimes I can see, but I think if you work that language in there and set up those expectations with the language that says, it's anonymous, that kind of thing on certain projects. It's so helpful in your marketing to be able to do that and to share.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely put that language in there. You might be like, I'd rather have the job. But if you can get that language in there, it's so important, especially if it's something that's you want to show. And I love that you said that, you don't photograph everything because you don't really want to attract all of the projects you do. You want to attract your ideal projects. And that's so true on social. When you put out those projects that you aspire to do more of, it seems that those clients come to you for more of those projects,
Exactly.
right? So fight back on that a little bit on your contracts to be able to publish those photos and do those social media, even if you have to work the language around or be a little more assertive in that, because you spend a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of creative effort. You have some marketing for that for your firm. I'm sure that's has helped you to grow your business as well, being able to market that, right?
And I would say for people who are starting out, you don't have to do a full-fledged photo shoot for every single project because photography is expensive.
It's very
expensive. That's another reason I'm selective because I could not photograph every single project, but you need to kind of pick which ones are going to help you get more work.
More of the work you want.
Exactly. Yeah.
For sure. We started doing that with my firm and posting. I spent, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 on a good photo, flew someone down from New York for not even a big project, but it made a huge difference in my marketing, putting it on social and getting more of those projects. And if they had said, no, you can't put this on social, I would have cried. Because I did not have that in my contract at the time. I just got lucky with that. Okay. Something else I want to touch on with SG23. So we mentioned that you have all of your bona fides on the website. You're highly educated. You worked for an architectural firm. You have your NCIDQ and you have a master's in sustainable design. And I was going through your website. I know that in the green room, we talked about you do source sustainably, right? But I'm wondering if that is part of your positioning and your marketing when you're working with clients. Do they come to you knowing this or specifically working with you because of that education or that piece?
So we try to specify sustainable products as often as possible. I find that if sustainable design is a priority for them, they will tell you upfront.
Okay.
They want to use sustainable product. We want to have, no VOC paints. They will tell you that upfront, at least in my experience. We don't market it so much because I think this came from my past experiences at other firms. So I used to work in extremely high-end residential design. So when I was getting my master's in sustainable design, one of the arguments was, okay, maybe some people don't want to do sustainable because it's more expensive. I mean, things have changed since then, but that was the argument back then. And I'm like, okay, that's probably the reason. So I need to get more high-end clients and I can specify these more expensive things. I'll be fine. But then I worked in high-end residential design and a lot of things were not sustainable and they could definitely afford it. So I was like, I think it's more of a mindset thing.
I see.
And I found that if I had like tile, for example, if I had one tile that was not sustainable and one that was, and I presented it in that way, like this is a very sustainable tile, that wouldn't do anything for the client.
Okay.
But if I presented it like this is handmade in California, the glazing is hand done. Like if I present it that way and none of those things are lies, then they'll go for that tile. So I find that if I talk about the features of the product and not say, oh, this is sustainable, then I have more luck selling it, if that makes sense.
I'm wondering if in your marketing, if you were like, SG23 sustainable interior designer, if that would be more like you, and I'm not saying do this, but I'm just curious as if that would be like niching down to those particular clients who that is a thing for, right? If that's a thing. And I'm not saying this for you. I'm saying this for that designer out there listening who loves doing it for, not saying you don't, but who loves doing it and wants to position themselves in that way.
Sure, yeah.
If that could be their differentiating factor for them. Right. So I hear what you're saying though. High-end clients, they know what they want. Here's the money, do it. But some clients, that is super important to them. So I'm sure that they're coming to you and, like you said, telling you, and they're seeing your bona fides on your website and saying you have a master's in that. So I think that that's fine. That's fine for now. I mean, you're established, right? We don't really need to be specific like that for you. But if you're starting out and you're looking for that differentiating factor, and that is something that you do or something that you want to be known specifically for, it's not a bad idea. Just putting that out there for the audience listening. All right. So this one last thing, this one piece of wisdom we're going to impart the audience is when you went out on your own to start your own interior design firm, you didn't just give your boss 2 weeks and say, you know what, I'm going to start my own interior design firm. It was very strategic and planned out. And the reason and I want you to answer this, but the reason I'm asking this in this way is because a lot of coaches or gurus are like, follow your bliss and trust in the universe. And, that's fine, but you want to be smart about it. And I know that you're going to tell me how you did it, and it's going to be super smart. So what did that look like?
So when I first started thinking about starting my own firm, I was in a place where I wasn't sure if I was going to look for a job at a different firm or start my own firm. So I was in an architecture firm, high-end residential design, fantastic firm, did really great work there, really great projects, but it wasn't fulfilling anymore. So they did interior architecture and they did architecture, but not interior design. So they weren't doing as many selections. And I started to miss that a bit. So I started to lean more towards starting my own company. So I'm like, all right, I need to have a backup plan in case this doesn't work. So the first thing I thought to do was I need to get my NCIDQ certification. So if this doesn't work out, I can at least get a better position at a different firm. So I worked on that. I think I worked on that for about 2 years because you can only take the exam 2 times during the year. It's April and October, I think. So got my certification. As soon as I got my certification, I'm like, all right, exit plan. So I eventually gave my notice at that firm. And one thing to really keep in mind is you don't want to burn any bridges. Unless they're really terrible to you, you don't want to burn bridges. And like I said, it was a really fantastic firm. So I gave my notice and then they asked me like, okay, well, can you consult for us? And I was like, oh, okay. So that was fantastic. So I still consulted for them. But in the meantime, I had gotten a part-time job at my first internship. So I didn't burn my bridges with them.
Nice.
So now I pretty much have a part-time job and then I have a regular client. So that was great. And the other thing that was pretty strategic about it, the thing that I was most nervous about was not having health insurance. Because I'm still not, but at the time I wasn't married. Like I'm like, I'm not going to have health insurance. So since I was working part-time, I could practice paying for my own health insurance to see if I could handle it on my own. And I could. So I think I was working the part-time job in consulting for only a couple months because I gave my notice a couple weeks before I turned 30. And then by Thanksgiving that year, I gave my notice at the part-time job. So it was only a couple months because I got so busy. I was starting to pull all-nighters. I'm like, this feels like undergrad. I'm not doing this again. So I eventually quit and then I was still consulting at the architecture firm, but then I was working from home. And then eventually over a couple years, I stopped the work with the firm and then I had enough of my own clients to support myself. But I was into my company about 6 years on my own before I hired a team.
Wow.
Yeah. So I got to the point, I had 14 projects by myself. And
Holy
that is
cow.
not sustainable.
No, it is not.
And then all the samples, anybody that knows interior designers, we take up so much room because we have so many samples. So the samples were like in my home office, in the dining room, in the living room. Like I'm like, I need to probably get a space. I either need to take on less projects or hire a team and get a space. So then I got my space. I actually sublet from someone that was only using half the space. And then eventually the owner said, we want to sell off this suite. Are you interested? So a year after that, I actually bought my office space. So everything was very, very strategic and well thought out. And
yeah,
I did it, I would say slowly. It didn't happen like over 2 years.
And I think that's a really smart way to do it because A, you're not burning your bridges, so you still have those relationships and you have a source of income as you're building your own clientele and growing slowly. I mean, you might have hired a little too slow.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I do love that. How I did it. I was lucky because we were talking in the green room. My previous career was I was a police officer, so I just retired and I had the pension there to help as well while I build it up, and I forecast a little bit to hold me over because you're not going to be $1 million business right out the gate. Yeah, so those interior designers are out there saying, "I'm just going to quit. I'm going to have a plan in place, have a fallback." I mean, you had the NCIDQ, which that's not an easy fallback, but whatever that looks like for you to have. Not saying it's not going to work, but you want to be smart and strategic about how you're doing this. So even if it's starting part-time, building up those clientele and getting that job before you can make that leap to the full-time
Yeah.
situation.
And
It's super smart.
I did have 6 months saved before I left my full-time job too.
Oh, yeah.
As another backup.
Nice. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and I would say, so the backups are good. Backups are just good in general. But I also think that helps you to find better clients faster. Because if you don't have any backup, then you're kind of in a scarcity
desperate.
mindset. And so you get a horrible client and then you're stuck with them for 6 months. And it's really hard to come back from that.
Yeah.
But if you have backup in place, then you're like, okay, I have a backup so I can ask for a little bit more for this project, for this proposal. It sets you up for success a lot faster.
Yeah. That's a really, really good point. I do love that. Okay. So you waited 6 years to hire a team. You were handling 14 projects by yourself, which I think my brains fell out of my ears. So aside from the obvious, what finally pushed you to hire that first hire, and how did that make a difference in your business?
Yeah, so I had to make the choice between either taking on less projects or hiring a team, and I didn't want to take on less projects. So the projects I was getting at the time were really exciting. So I'm like, all right, hiring a team. And that year, it was interesting because I also got the studio and I felt like I had everything I wanted, but it was really hard. Growing pains are real.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. So I was still overwhelmed. And like you said earlier, I probably hired too late. And I learned the hard way that if you hire when you're already busy, it's really hard because you still have to train these people.
Yeah.
you don't even have time to interview people, let alone train them. So that was the point when I hired my first business coach. And she really put a lot of things in perspective and told me, kind of gave me homework, which is I'm type A. I love homework. If I know exactly what to do, I'll do it. So that year I doubled my revenue, which was fantastic.
Wow.
However, when you double your revenue, your taxes go up. So be aware of that because that year I had the money in the bank, but I hadn't switched to quarterly payments yet.
Been there, done that.
So, and I have the same account now. So I got a different account that year. And she was like, let's switch to quarterly payments. And I'm like, let's do that. So I don't have a heart attack every year.
Yeah.
So that was a big leap there. And then revenue has gone up pretty steadily every year. Last year was interesting because my father was sick and he passed away almost exactly a year ago, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. But when that happens, I can't speak for everybody, but for me, I still have to run a business, but I can't, you're not as present because you're dealing emotionally, you don't have the energy to do all the things. So I'm like, okay, I have to work more efficiently because I still have to get this stuff done, but I have to work more efficiently. So we actually made a little bit less revenue, but significantly more profit.
Oh, that's a good combo.
Yeah. So that was very interesting.
A little less work, a little more profit.
Yeah. So, and it's things that the reasons that happened, but it was still like interesting thing to learn. So the thing I focus on mostly is trying to make systems as efficient as possible. So then you work less hard, but then you're making more profit.
And you're growing year by year.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not going to tell me what it is. It's okay. I won't. But all right. Shila Griffith, thank you so much for sharing your journey and the growth of your interior design business. I know that some of these tips and hard knocks, right? Because you lived through this, you learned these going through this and building, 10 years of an interior design firm. Hopefully that'll help some interior designers listening skip some of that growing pain, right? You're not going to skip it all. I'm here to tell you. So thank you so much for that. Now I have to ask you, are you ready for the What Up Wingnut round?
Oh, yes.
What would the hashtag on your tombstone be?
Dog mom.
I love dogs too.
Yes.
What kind of dog do you have?
She is a Beagle Shepherd mix. So she looks like a miniature shepherd, but she's very sassy.
Beagles. I love beagles. They howl. Does she howl?
Actually, no. The only thing, she looks like a miniature shepherd, but the only thing she does like a shepherd is her bark. Her bark is like a shepherd. But her personality is all beagle.
I have a corgi and she is my BB. Her name is Newt. And she can get whatever she wants. You're stuck on a deserted island, but you can have your one favorite food. What is it?
Ice cream.
What kind?
Either mint chocolate chip or salted caramel.
All right. I'm down with either of those. Last but not least, recommend a book to the audience that's impacted you.
4-Hour Work Week.
Nice. Tim Ferriss.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
how did that help?
Well, it goes back to boundaries, I think. So
yeah, I was just going to say boundaries.
Yeah, I don't check my email I don't sit in my email all day. Those are the most inefficient days. I check in the morning when I come in to see if there's anything I can delegate to my team. And then I try to check it at noon and at 4. And then other than that, I try not to stay in my email because if it's an emergency, they will call.
I need to start doing that, Shila. I believe it or not, after all this time, I still have not disciplined myself to do that.
Well, I pause my email.
I did that for a while and then it was killing me.
Oh no. Oh no.
I know. Shila Griffith, thank you so much for joining us. Please tell the Wingnuts where they can go to find out more about you and SG23, and we'll call it a day.
Oh, yeah. So our website is sg23design.com, and we're most active on Instagram, and that's at sg23 as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Shila, for joining us and being on Design by Wingnut Social to share your journey, your losses, your wins, your great success, and your journey to growing SG23 into the design firm it is today. I really do appreciate that. I love to hear the actual stories of interior designers and how they went from point A to point B, D, E, F, or Z. And I really do appreciate your transparency and you're willing to share that with us. Guys, if you're out there in the audience and that helped, if anything Shila said resonated with you, or you took information, or there was a lesson there that you're not going to do or you are going to do, reach out to Shila and tell her thank you for being on this show. That's it for this episode today. Remember, Design by Wingnut Social is sponsored by Wingnut Social, the digital marketing agency for home pros such as yourself. Head on over to wingnutsocial.com, hit that apply to work with Wingnut, and let's see if we're a good fit. And that's it for this week. Remember, until next time, to get out there, get uncomfortable, and be great.
You've reached the end of this episode of Designed by Wingnut Social. But that's only the first step into accelerating your business the Wingnut way. Head over to wingnutsocial.com or call us at 786-206-4331 to see how we can help take your business from meh to amazing. We'll see you on the next episode of Designed by Wingnut Social, your digital marketing tightly fastened.
Okay. I had people when I was a cop, they would say, "Hey, do you know this officer?" And there was like 3,500.
Oh my goodness.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.